Okay, welcome back. This is part 3 of the Marshall Plan videos. We're going to take a look at a segment here on Italy. You just got to see what took place in Greece, in France, and Yugoslavia. You've had an opportunity to take a chance to see what's the Soviet side of it, the American side, still trying to decide whether we were being altruistic or self-serving in the process, as you've heard people from both sides argue. And now we're going to look at what happens in Italy. Italy is a very extensive story, and it also becomes the first place that the CIA gets involved. So we're going to run the video, it runs about 7 minutes or so, and then we'll talk more after it.
In Italy, by 1948, the Communist Party, led by Togliatti, dominated the left-wing Popular Front. The Christian Democrats, led by De Gasperi, ran the government. In April, the first general election since the war raised expectations of a communist victory through the ballot box.
Io mi aspettavo che il Fronte Popolare,
I expected the Popular Front, the union of all the parties of the left, to win the election. This union of the left had to get together to counterbalance the Christian Democrats and the forces of the right.
Some Italians feared a communist victory.
That election could have been a touch-and-go election between Italy saying on one side of the world or the other side of the world. First of all, I think it would have been a tragedy for Italy, but I think it would have been a tragedy for Europe. I think it would have been a tragedy for the Mediterranean, and it would have been a setback for America.
In the United States, a campaign was orchestrated to persuade Italian Americans to write to relatives urging them not to vote communist. 10 million letters were sent.
Dear cousin Maria, have you thought what a communist victory would mean for Italy? It would be terrible.
Italy would be ruled direct from the Kremlin. Look what happened in Czechoslovakia.
You must realize how serious the situation is. You should see what the papers are saying.
Please,
yes.
listen to us. I urge you not to vote communist in the elections. Your cousin, Luigi.
Fu un'iniziativa molto intelligente perché arrivava direttamente alle famiglie.
It was a very intelligent initiative because it got through to the families directly.
Mezzo secolo di emigrazione.
After half a century of emigration, there were hundreds of thousands of Italian families in America. So, to receive a letter of encouragement from them, a letter stating that they shouldn't vote for the Communist Party, well, that was very influential.
Letter writing was not enough. The newly created CIA decided to take the offensive.
What the CIA needed was authority to develop a program of covert action. General Marshall knew that the situation in Italy was critical. The largest communist party in the world outside of the Soviet Empire. Not having an organization and knowing that the State Department could not achieve the things that he knew had to be done, he personally said, we must explore the means of getting authority to carry out a covert action program that would challenge this tremendous communist threat.
This led to a debate within the young CIA. Did it have the legal authority to carry out covert operations? CIA lawyers studied the wording of the new National Security Act.
If the president of the National Security Council, the head of the National Security Council, is the president of the United States, and if he specifically directs the CIA under Hillenkotter to carry out operations to help Democratic parties, and if the Congress that was put in, if the Congress gives the money to support such a thing, then the authority is there. And that was the green light.
The CIA then intervened. It began covert operations in support of anti-communists and of the Christian Democrat Party.
I was in that branch of the CIA at the time that had to rush into the breach without training in covert action. And we had bags of money that we delivered to selected politicians to defray their political expenses, their campaign expenses, for posters, for pamphlets.
Io direttamente non sono a conoscenza di questo.
Personally, I'm not aware of that. It was spoken of, but I don't know anything about it, because I was never directly involved in party affairs.
The Church, too, mounted a powerful campaign against the communists.
Pope Pius XII was very concerned about the Communist Party. Not so much about their politics. He was concerned about their doctrine. And as Pope, Pius XII had to be concerned about what was happening in Italy at the time.
A network of election committees was created. They worked in close parallel to the organization of the Catholic Church.
I can say that all the parties envied our electoral structure, and especially the creation of election posters. In the rural areas, there were no cinemas. It was unthinkable at that time. So we had this idea. We sent some lorries out into towns and villages, and we projected the films at night, electioneering films. When we showed those films, everybody used to rush to the squares where the films were projected. They were always very crowded.
Pope Pius XII and the Catholic Church had supported the fascists throughout their decades of rule. But the Vatican totally opposed communism. Just days before the election, Pius XII excommunicated many members of the Italian Communist Party.
You know that Pius XII, in one of his speeches, said you are either for Christ or against Christ. And the Communist Party was against Christ. They were clearly atheists. So, it was a duty of the Pope and of the Church to protect their people. So there was no other protection on the part of the Church but to organize all the Christian movements to oppose the Communist Party.
On April 18, 1948, Italy went to the polls. The Christian Democrats won a landslide victory. Italy would remain a member of the Western Alliance. The communist share of the vote was almost halved.
All right, so please take a moment to talk amongst yourselves and your groups again about what you just saw. Is this something the United States should be involved in? Does it fall into the context of altruism? The idea of using the CIA for the very first time. How does all this play into the idea of an altruistic program to help other people, to help the nations of Europe rebuild from the war? Take a moment, talk about that amongst yourselves, and then we'll be back for the last section and some final thoughts. Okay, so I hope you had a chance to discuss this. This last little clip helps summarize the Marshall Plan and talks a little bit about what Italy gets from the United States in terms of rebuilding and how Italy has an opportunity to grow as a result of that. But what I really want you to think about is go back to the original question about being altruistic. Or is this a form of American hegemony? Is this the American empire that we've talked about? We've often asked that question in class, is America an empire? If you think America is an empire, is this the beginning of it, or did it start earlier? I'd like to know what you guys think about it. So again, watch the clip. I'll stop it at the end, spend a few minutes in your groups, And then please, I trust you guys have been taking notes about this so that we can discuss it when I get back in on Monday. And once again, if you don't have a chance to finish these, please watch them on your own.
The CIA, too, drew its conclusions from the election victory.
Well, it was very gratifying. We didn't know at that time that we had carried out the first political action, covert political action program in the history of American intelligence that would be followed by many, many, many more.
Now that Italy had elected to stay in the Western Bloc, the United States released a flood of Marshall aid. In Turin, the Fiat Motor Company received giant new assembly line machines from Detroit and Pittsburgh. Fiat was re-equipped with some of the most sophisticated machinery in Europe. Fiat's recovery would fuel the revival of Italian industry.
In Europe and in Italy especially, we thought of America as all-powerful. They had 50% of the world GNP, they had all the modern technology, they'd beaten the Nazi system, and I don't say that we didn't expect it, but we were pleasantly surprised to see the generosity of their foreign policy. And the generosity of their foreign policy at that moment was expressed through the Marshall Plan.
The Marshall Plan also demonstrated the United States' desire to secure Europe's future. The message was, modernize your economies, and you too can be like us.
Americans were trying to impose American ideas, American organization into Europe. There was a feeling that if the European economies were to be rebuilt, if Europe was to be competitive in the world economy again, it would have to imitate American production methods, American management methods, and so on. And many European businessmen were eager to do this.
In those years, I mean, the immediate post-war years, the whole of Europe was in a recession. So first of all, it helped us step out of a recession. It gave us a certain amount of speed to the economy. But that was the first step. The second real step that was it approached this European community on the whole. It brought us towards NATO, and it brought the European countries closer to each other and to the United States.
The Marshall Plan set out to build a European consumer society. The United States wanted a free enterprise Western Bloc, peaceful, united, and tied to American trade and capital. The Soviet Union was forced to build its own rival bloc. The people of the socialist countries would eye the West for 40 years and wonder.
All right, so the question is, who was right? Were we altruistic? Were we empire building? Were the Soviets right? Did the United States want to divide Europe into two distinct camps? Was that the goal? You got to go back and look at what we talked about, or what you should have talked about on the lesson before, in terms of who was America responsible for the Cold War. Where does the responsibility for that lie? Did the U.S. distrust of the Soviets cause that? Did the Soviet fear of invasions from Germany do that? Was Stalin only interested in getting some buffer land between the Soviet Union and Western Europe for fear of another invasion? These are all the types of inference questions you guys should be thinking and talking about. If you have some time left, please talk about them. If not, we'll spend a few minutes on Monday. Hope you have a great weekend. See you on Monday.